Welcome back. If you enjoyed dark, realistic horror stories that feel like they could actually happen, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with me until the very end. Because tonight's story only gets worse the deeper you go. This happened during a construction project under Boston. At least, that's what the official report said. My name is Daniel Carter, and 3 years ago, I was part of a night crew hired to expand an underground utility line beneath an old section of the city. Boston is old. Older than most people realize. Beneath the streets are layers of tunnels, sealed passages, forgotten rail lines, and pieces of infrastructure that haven't been touched since the early 1900s. Most of it stays buried, but sometimes construction digs a little too deep. That night, there were 5 of us working underground. Me, our foreman Rick, 2 equipment operators named Marcus and Tyler, and a quiet guy named Owen who handled safety inspections. The job was simple. Drill through a reinforced concrete barrier, run new cable lines, then seal it again. Standard work, at least that's what we thought. The drill chewed through the concrete wall around 1:40 in the morning. Sparks flew, dust filled the air, and finally the bit punched through with a hollow crack. Immediately, cold air rushed out of the hole. Not just cool underground air, freezing air. Rick killed the drill and shined his flashlight through the opening. The beam disappeared into darkness. "That's weird," he muttered. The blueprint said nothing was behind that wall except solid earth. Marcus widened the hole with a sledgehammer until we could fit through. Behind the wall wasn't dirt. It was a tunnel. An old one, brick-lined, arched ceiling, and long abandoned. Rusted rail tracks ran straight down the center, half buried under dust and debris. The place smelled stale, like air that hadn't moved in decades. Owen checked the wall carefully. "This isn't on the maps," he said quietly. Rick laughed. "Boston's full of stuff not on the maps." We stepped inside anyway. Our boots echoed against the old rails as we walked deeper into the tunnel. Every sound carried too far, bouncing off the curved brick ceiling and disappearing into darkness. The tunnel stretched farther than our flashlights could reach. Tyler kicked something on the ground. It rolled across the concrete with a hollow sound. A metal lunchbox, old, rusted, the kind people carried back in the 1950s. Marcus picked it up and opened it. Inside was a moldy sandwich and a train ticket. Stamped 1962. Rick frowned. Why would someone leave this down here? That's when Owen's flashlight stopped moving. He was staring at the wall. "Guys," he said slowly. We turned. At first, I thought it was graffiti. But it wasn't. Handprints. Hundreds of them. Pressed into the dust and grime covering the bricks. Some small, some large. All smeared across the walls, reaching upward. Dragging toward the ceiling. Like people had been clawing at the tunnel, trying to climb out. The deeper we walked, the more prints appeared. Thousands of them. And they all pointed the same direction. Forward. Rick forced a laugh. Probably old workers messing around, but nobody else left. Because farther down the tunnel, just at the edge of our lights, something massive sat on the tracks. A subway train, and its headlights were still glowing. For a moment, none of us said a word. The train sat there in the middle of the abandoned tunnel, like it had been waiting for us. The headlights were dim but steady, casting a weak yellow glow across the tracks. Dust floated through the beams like snow. Marcus spoke first. "That's impossible." He was right. The train looked old. Not modern subway cars like the ones Boston runs today. This thing was built from heavy steel panels with rivets along the sides. The paint had long since faded, peeling into patches of gray metal. But the lights were on. Rick stepped forward slowly. Maybe it's some kind of museum piece they parked down here, but even as he said it, none of us believed it. Owen crouched near the rails and touched them carefully. He jerked his hand back immediately. "They're warm," the words hung in the tunnel. Warm rails meant one thing. The train had moved recently. Tyler shook his head. There's no power down here. Rick walked toward the front of the train. The number plate above the windshield was almost completely rusted away, but a few numbers were still visible. 1963. Boston had retired trains from that era decades ago. Rick grabbed the handle on the driver's door and pulled. The door creaked open with a long metallic groan. Inside the control cabin was dark, but the instrument panel was glowing faintly. Small orange lights flickered across dusty gauges that should have been dead for 50 years. But that wasn't the worst part. The driver's seat wasn't empty. There was a skeleton sitting in it, still wearing a conductor's uniform. Its bony hands were wrapped around the controls like it had died trying to stop the train. Tyler stumbled backward. Jesus, but Owen wasn't looking at the skeleton. He was staring down the length of the train. Guys, the doors. We followed his gaze. Every passenger door along the train was open. Rick frowned. That doesn't make any sense. Marcus climbed into the cabin beside the skeleton and looked at the dashboard. The power shouldn't even work, he muttered. Then something moved inside the train. A sound. A faint shifting noise from one of the passenger cars behind us. Like someone slowly standing up. We froze. Rick turned his flashlight toward the first car and stepped inside. Rows of old vinyl seats stretched into darkness, empty, but the floor was covered in thick dust. Except for a narrow path through the center aisle, the dust there had been disturbed recently. Fresh footprints leading deeper into the train. And they weren't ours. Rick whispered, "Tell me someone else is down here." No one answered, because behind us, far down the tunnel, something heavy moved in the darkness, and the handprints on the walls began to slide downward, one by one. The sound behind us started as a low scraping noise, metal dragging across concrete. Then came the breathing, slow, deep, wet. Tyler turned his flashlight toward the tunnel entrance. Nothing was there, but the darkness looked thicker somehow, like it was slowly pushing forward. Rick climbed down from the train cabin. "Everyone back inside," he said quietly. We didn't argue. All 5 of us stepped into the first passenger car. The old train creaked under our weight, metal popping softly like it had been asleep too long. Marcus slammed the door shut behind us. The windows were so dirty we could barely see outside. But we heard it. Something massive moving through the tunnel. Closer. The floor of the train vibrated slightly as it approached. Then the train lights flickered. Once, twice. Then they turned on. Every overhead light inside the train burst to life, flooding the car with cold white illumination. Rick stared up at them. "That's not possible." Owen moved toward the back of the car slowly, following the strange footprints in the dust. They continued through the aisle. Into the next car. Rick swallowed hard. "We're not staying here." He walked to the control cabin again. The skeleton still sat frozen in the driver's seat. Rick grabbed the control lever and pulled it. Nothing happened. Then the intercom crackled. A burst of static filled the car. We all froze. The speaker popped again, and a voice whispered through the train, "Passengers, please remain seated." Tyler nearly screamed. "That's not funny." The voice came again. Next stop, below. Then the train lurched forward, hard. We were thrown into the seats as the wheels screamed against the rails. The train was moving. But the tunnel outside the windows wasn't the same one we had entered. The brick walls were gone. Now there were only endless black tunnels stretching downward, deeper underground than any subway system should exist. And outside the window of the car behind us, something ran alongside the train, keeping pace, too tall, too thin, and when it turned its head toward the window, its face was covered in handprints. The train picked up speed. The old metal cars rattled violently as we shot deeper into the tunnels. The tracks sloped downward at a steep angle, sending us farther beneath the city than any subway should ever go. Marcus grabbed one of the poles to steady himself. This isn't real, he kept repeating. But the windows told a different story. The tunnels outside twisted in impossible ways. Some sections looked carved from rock, others from smooth concrete that looked newer than anything above ground. And the thing outside was still running beside us. Every time the train lights flickered, I saw it more clearly. Its body was long and thin, arms dragging along the ground like broken limbs. The handprints covering its face were moving, sliding across its skin like they were alive. Owen backed away from the window. That's what made the prints on the walls, he whispered. Rick was still fighting with the controls in the driver's cabin. There's gotta be a break somewhere. The intercom crackled again. Final stop approaching. The train slowed suddenly. The wheels shrieked against the rails as we came to a grinding halt. Outside the windows was a massive underground station, but it wasn't empty. Hundreds of figures stood silently on the platform. Some looked human, others didn't. Their faces were pale, their bodies thin, and their hands were pressed against the train windows as if they had been waiting a very long time. The doors unlocked. One by one, click, click, click. The first door slid open. Cold air rushed into the car. Rick shouted, "Nobody move." But the skeleton in the conductor's seat did. Its bones cracked loudly as its skull slowly turned toward us, and its jaw opened. End of the line.